I want to start by being honest about the medical piece of this, because I think it matters and because I don't want to dress this up as something purely paranormal when the foundation of it is a real and documented sleep disorder. I am a sleepwalker. I have been diagnosed officially by a sleep specialist who I saw about 2 years into the experiences I'm going to describe, and the diagnosis is clear and not particularly mysterious in itself. Sleepwalking is a disorder of arousal, which is exactly what it sounds like. The brain partially wakes from deep sleep, but not completely, leaving you in a state where you can move and navigate and even perform complex tasks without being conscious in the way you're conscious right now. Most sleepwalkers do mundane things. They go to the kitchen. They rearrange objects. They occasionally go outside and then come back in. Their bodies move through familiar spaces on the grooves of habit without anyone being home to direct the movement. What I'm about to tell you is not that, or not entirely that. The sleepwalking framework explains some of it, and I want to be upfront about that, but it doesn't explain all of it, and I've sat with the parts it doesn't explain for long enough now that I've stopped waiting for an explanation to arrive and have settled into simply describing what happened accurately and letting you decide what to do with it. It started about 5 years ago. I was living alone in an apartment, ground floor, and I woke up one morning to find my front door unlocked when I was certain I had locked it the night before. I keep my door locked. I have always kept my door locked. It is a habit so ingrained that I check it 3 times before bed without thinking about it, the way some people check the stove. The door being unlocked was strange enough to register, but not so strange that I couldn't explain it. I could have forgotten to lock it. It happened moving on. The second time I woke up with the front door unlocked, it was standing open. Not wide open. Just ajar, a few inches, letting in the cold air of an October morning. I stood in my hallway in my bare feet, looking at the open door, and I felt the particular chill that is only partly from the cold air. I went outside and looked up and down the street. Nothing unusual, just the street in the early morning, still quiet, the light, the gray-blue of a day that hasn't committed to itself yet. I started setting a small alarm on the door, a battery-operated contact alarm, the kind that emits a loud beep when a door is opened. The idea was that if I opened the door in my sleep, the alarm would wake me before I actually went anywhere. The first night I set it, nothing happened. The second night, nothing. The third night I woke up at 2 in the morning to the alarm going off and found myself standing in my open doorway with 1 foot already on the threshold. The cold air coming in, the street dark and quiet and entirely unremarkable in every visible way. I stood there for a moment, the alarm still beeping, fully awake now, aware of myself standing in my doorway in the middle of the night. I had no memory of getting up, no sense of having decided to do this. Just the alarm and the cold and the street outside and the awareness that I had been, a few seconds ago, about to walk into it. I closed the door. I sat down on my couch. I sat there for a while in the dark, the way you sit when you're trying to get your bearings on something, and I thought about the door being unlocked and the door being open, and now this, standing in the doorway with 1 foot out and no awareness of how I'd gotten there. I saw my doctor and was eventually referred to the sleep specialist and was diagnosed and was given the standard guidance for sleepwalking management, securing the bedroom, environmental cues, certain adjustments to sleep hygiene and stress management, all reasonable, all practical, all things I implemented. The sleepwalking did not stop, but it reduced in frequency and in scope, and the environmental safeguards I put in place meant that I stopped waking up in doorways and started waking up in the kitchen or the hallway or occasionally the bathroom, which is a significant improvement in terms of safety even if it remains disorienting. But here's the part that the sleep disorder diagnosis doesn't account for, the part that I want to tell you about carefully. 3 times over about a 2-year period, I woke up somewhere I did not recognize. I want to be precise about what I mean by that. I mean, I woke up in a place I had never consciously been, not my apartment, not my building, not my street, not anywhere in my neighborhood that I could identify. Places that required me to figure out where I was from scratch, the way you do in a hotel in an unfamiliar city when you first open your eyes and your brain runs through its orienting sequence of where am I, what is this room, how did I get here? The first time was a park. I woke up sitting on a bench in a park I didn't recognize at around 4 in the morning. I was fully dressed, which was something. At least whatever version of me had made the journey had had the sense to put on clothes before going out into an October night, or had been dressed when it started. I was in a park, on a bench, near a small ornamental pond with a fountain that wasn't running at that hour. The park lit by the kind of decorative lighting that parks install along their paths. Trees around me, a building visible through the trees that I didn't recognize. I got out my phone, checked my location. I was about a mile and a half from my apartment, a mile and a half on foot through city streets in the middle of the night with no memory of the journey. I called a car and went home and sat with it for a long time. The park itself was unremarkable. I went back in daylight the next day to look at it. A pleasant neighborhood park, small, the kind that a residential area has as an amenity. A few acres of green with paths and benches and the ornamental pond. Nothing distinctive about it that I could identify. Nothing that explained why my unconscious navigation had brought me specifically there from a mile and a half away. The second time was harder to explain away. I woke up standing in front of a house. Residential street, older neighborhood, well-kept houses with mature trees. I was standing on the sidewalk in front of a particular house, medium-sized, brick, dark at that hour, a front porch with 2 wooden chairs on it, looking at it. Not doing anything, just standing on the sidewalk in front of this house in the dark, looking at it as though I had come there specifically to look at it. My phone told me I was about 2 miles from my apartment, in a direction I had no particular reason to go, in a neighborhood I didn't know. A Tuesday night in late November, 2 in the morning, 40 degrees, standing in front of a house I had no conscious connection to. I stood there for a while after I woke up, which sounds strange but felt like the right thing to do. I looked at the house the way I apparently had been looking at it before I came back to myself. It was a house. Brick, porch, 2 chairs, dark. Nothing about it that my waking mind could make sense of. Nothing that explained why I was there. I took a picture of it before I called a car home. I don't know why exactly. It felt like the thing to do, to have some record of it, the way you'd document something you couldn't explain and didn't want to lose the details of. I drove past that street in daylight a few days later, found the house, sat in front of it for a while. It looked exactly as it had in the dark, minus the darkness. A well-maintained brick house with a front porch and 2 Adirondack chairs and a garden that had been put to bed for winter, covered in straw. I don't know who lived there. I still don't know who lives there. I've never knocked on the door. Because what would I say? I stood in front of your house at 2 in the morning while sleepwalking, and I'd like to know why. The third time was the one that I've thought about the most, and that I keep coming back to when I try to make sense of the whole pattern. I woke up in a cemetery. I want to say quickly that I was not in distress when I woke up. The scene was not frightening in itself, and I don't tell this because I want to create a horror-adjacent atmosphere. I'm telling it because it's what happened and because the specific details of it matter. It was a small cemetery, the kind attached to an old church, the kind that predates the modern large-scale memorial park model. Headstones, some very old, the irregular spacing of a burying ground that grew organically over generations. A wrought iron fence around the perimeter, a gate that was apparently not locked at 2 in the morning, or that I had found a way through. Old oak trees. The church dark behind it. I was standing at a specific headstone, not wandering through the cemetery, not sitting on a bench or resting against the fence, standing at a specific headstone, looking at it, the way I had been standing in front of the brick house looking at it, with the attention of someone who had come there specifically and knew what they were there for. I looked at the headstone. The carving was weathered but legible. A name, a birth year in the mid-1800s, a death year in the early 1900s. A phrase beneath the dates that I will tell you exactly, gone before but not far ahead, gone before but not far ahead. I stood in that cemetery in the November dark reading that headstone for a long time. Then I took a picture of it with my phone. Then I went to the gate and found that it did open and walked out and called a car and went home. I've been back to that cemetery in daylight. I found the headstone. It's still there. The carving still legible, the phrase still exactly as I read it in the dark. I've done some research on the name. An ordinary person, from what I can find. A man who lived an ordinary life in this city in the late 19th and early 20th century. No particular connection to me that I've been able to identify. No shared surname, no family connection I can trace. Nothing that explains why my sleeping self made its way to stand at his headstone at 2 in the morning. But I think about what it says, gone before but not far ahead. And I think about all the places my sleeping self went that my waking self didn't choose. The park at 4 in the morning, the brick house with the porch chairs, the cemetery and the headstone. And I think about whether there's a logic to it that belongs to the sleeping part of me rather than the waking part, whether the version of me that navigates in the dark has access to something the version that walks around in daylight doesn't, whether it was trying to show me something. I've been in therapy about the sleepwalking, practical therapeutic work on managing the anxiety that worsens it and the sleep hygiene that contains it, and it has helped. I've been stable for about a year now, no episodes that I'm aware of that took me outside the apartment. The door alarm still goes off sometimes and I find myself in the kitchen. But that's the mundane end of it, the ordinary sleepwalking that the diagnosis accounts for. But I still have those 3 photographs on my phone. The park bench by the ornamental pond. The brick house with the porch chairs. The weathered headstone and its phrase, gone before but not far ahead. I think about that phrase when I think about the people I've lost. My dad, a few years ago. My grandmother before that. The accumulation of people who were here and then weren't, who were gone from the accessible world and somewhere else. Somewhere I don't have directions to yet. Not far ahead. Maybe that's what my sleeping self was trying to tell my waking self. Maybe the part of me that navigates in the dark has a different map than the part that navigates in daylight. A map that includes things the daytime map leaves off. Maybe it went to that headstone because it needed me to read that particular phrase at a particular time in my life when I needed it. Gone before but not far ahead. I don't know. I hold it the way I hold all the things in this life that won't resolve into certainty. Loosely, with curiosity rather than anxiety, with the understanding that some things are worth sitting with even when they won't explain themselves. Sleep well tonight. If you wake up somewhere unexpected, look around carefully before you decide how to feel about it. Sometimes the places we end up in the dark are exactly where we needed to be. Good night.